So I'm thinking about my experience in the novitiate, and I remember being very
Yeah.
maybe worried or anxious that I would get prayer right. And in typical Dominican fashion, or maybe just simply in typical Gregory fashion, the move that I made was to read books about prayer, which is one approach, right? You can inform your practice by a certain theory or by benefiting from the theory of those who have gone before you in the church's life and the church's tradition. But I think, kind of reflecting on it, based on what you just described in response to the last answer, that's not that needn't be the case. I think there's probably a difference that one might describe between living reasonably, which is to say according to reason, virtuously, and then living intellectually, which is to dedicate part of one's life to a kind of conscious reflection or a kind of meta reflection upon the life itself. And I suspect that there's probably something to be said for the way that we approach many disciplines. I mean, like there's a whole cottage industry of books that's like, how do I get more out of Mass? And the typical move is like, think more about it, or think differently about it, or think this, that way, or the other about it. So maybe I'm gesturing here towards a kind of question like, to be reasonable, to be rational, to be intellectual. Are there some distinctions that we can draw in and amongst these different human experiences, human phenomena, which help us to better embody happiness whilst reflecting upon happiness?
Well, you want to plunge into it. I think that good friends plunge into their friendship. They practice it all the time. They do good things for each other. They enjoy each other. They aren't necessarily celebrating about their friendship all the time and thinking, "Gee, what exactly made that an act of friendship? What do you say, Bruce?" This isn't necessarily how it's going to be. Now, there's a misunderstanding of this that I think is very, very easy. I can remember years and years ago when I first came, when I was a very young man, and I came across the idea that our highest good lies in contemplation in some sense. And I saw one version of this in Thomas Aquinas, which I misunderstood. I saw it in Aristotle, and I really didn't grasp this at all. I thought that this meant, oh, what that means is, you think about the theorem, and you think about how you got to the theorem, and you think about this philosophical proof, and you reflect on this, and you do what scientists and philosophers do. Well, that's a good activity of the mind. It's a high activity of the mind. It isn't what Thomas Aquinas. It may be what Aristotle means by contemplation. These truths, they're blackboard truths for him. They're things that can't other than be the way that they are, and you just think about them. But Aristotle doesn't know that the truth is something that we can be immersed in. That the truth is something that we can that can know us, and we can be known. We can know it in return. Thomas Aquinas does. This is the contemplation of God that we're talking about, and I think that to contemplate God, almost a better word for this. Well, maybe it is a better word. Is to love God. Love is something the mind participates in too. A dog may have affection, but the dog doesn't have love. We direct our will according to a true understanding of the true good of the other person, or in the case of God, whose good is perfect and we can't contribute anything to it, we exult in that good. We delight in it. This is love. This is personal. This is knowing God as the lover and the beloved know each other. So sure, the lover and the beloved know each other, and the mind is involved there, but it's not just a blackboard activity. And so if we think that the happiest people in the world are a bunch of philosophers sitting around in a seminar room, we're really misunderstanding what's going on here.
So this common occasions for me. Okay, so I'm thinking how love is a kind of mode of knowing, or love is a mode of sympathizing, maybe to put it in more basic terms. And I'm thinking about the way that wisdom is described in the classical tradition. Maybe when people hear wisdom, they think high and lofty thoughts, or they think the philosopher gazing into the stars. But what is there, like what about wisdom kind of draws together these veins of knowledge and love such that one has, a sympathy, not in a kind of crass way, but has a real sympathy for the other, for the truth, for the reality that's at stake, which actually begets this type of engagement, this type of encounter, which you're describing?
Yeah, Thomas Aquinas says that love does involve a kind of a knowledge. The lover and the beloved know each other, but it's not just that they know a set of propositions about each other. They know each other in something like the way that they know themselves, because through their love they have become akin to each other. They have become, he says, connatural to each other. They have become adapted to each other. My wife and I sometimes she knows what I'm thinking. I know what she's thinking, but it's not because I've gone through a process of inference and demonstration. It's that we have become akin to each other. We become like each other. Now, the great thing would be, this is what we experience. I mentioned the husband and his wife. Good friends can experience this. This is what we can experience in our relationship with God. Now, I think there are limitations on this in this life, but in the next life, we will experience that perfectly. He will not making us infinite like himself, but he will accommodate himself to us. We become, as one of the apostles puts it in the New Testament, partakers of the divine life. Now, that's knowledge and that's love. This is wisdom. It's not for nothing that the wisdom books in the Old Testament use they personify divine wisdom as a woman who says, "Turn in at my house and let me give you a feast, and to turn away from your foolish ways." It says she dances before God all the time. This is an attribute of God Himself that we're talking about. It's not separate from God, but to personalize it is very important. The truth itself is not an abstraction. It isn't. We can make propositions about the truth that are accurate, but the truth itself is not a proposition. It isn't an abstraction. What we want to talk about is truth Himself in person, and that is God.
So I want to draw out two examples from literature to illumine one of the points you just made, and then transition from there into a new vein of conversation. So I'm thinking about what you said, where the beloved or the lover can read the thoughts of the beloved to a certain extent, insofar as there is this love between them, and that it's not a kind of cold and calculating thing. It's it's a kind of warm interpersonal thing. So I'm thinking of the way that Sherlock Holmes reads the thoughts of Dr. Watson. He, based on glances and sighs and where he's looking on the newspaper, he can deduce, through those steps that you described, to make a variety of inferences and then come to the ultimate conclusion in such a way as to bewilder Dr. Watson and to show his prowess. Whereas I'm thinking of another example from the book A Severe Mercy by Sheldon Van Auken, where he describes how they want to kind of bind their lives together by 1,000 sharings. And so, so intimate is their love that when Davy looks at the mantelpiece when they're hosting company, he knows that what she wants are for the candelabra to be lit so as to set the mood on account of the fact that the sun has gone down. So whereas the one is a kind of stepwise function, the other is just a simple gaze.